taken by the Modi government. India has now put China on notice. India is all set to rename 30 new places in Tibet. New names will be on historical research. The list will in fact be released by Indian Army, which is manning the LAC, and will be changed in their maps as well first. And top intelligence sources are in fact telling CNN News 18 that India is upset with China renaming in recent years of a total of 30 odd places in Arunachal Pradesh by claiming that they are part of China's territory. But this time, in new Prime Minister Modi's regime, he will make counter claims by giving its own name to a number of places currently in occupied Tibet. This is the big news break that CNN News 18 is currently bringing to you, that India is all set to rename 30 places in Tibet. Let's quickly go across to Abhishek Jha, who's sharing the inputs with us. Abhishek, share what can we now expect from this list? A, B, when should we expect this list to be officially announced?
Well, Akanksha, it's more like a tit-for-tat thing. While the geographical realities would not change much, even if the naming is done by the Indian side or the Chinese side, this is a posturing of an aggressive posturing by the Indian side that if China considers that renaming any geographical location, what Chinese side has been doing in Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim and other bordering areas, would make any difference to it, then India is all up for it. And while we are hearing these reports that Indian Army has prepared the list of those geographical locations which are part of Tibet, and they are going to rename it based on the historical context and in that reference, that is clearly going to hit China, and they are going to react sharply to it. And probably they will also realize that in the past, what they have been doing by renaming the geographical location very much part of sovereign India, the same format is now being applied to them, and they are being treated the same way.
Abhishek, it's interesting that you call it a tit-for-tat move, which is why it's very important that one delves deeper into this kind of nomenclature offensive that we've seen coming from China first. Let's not forget the fact that they've renamed Arunachal Pradesh to Zangnan, which they call, or it means in Mandarin rather, southern Tibet.
Well, see, Chinese side, they have been, while not being an open aggressor, they have been trying to use this coercive or intimidation tactic, not only with the India and the bordering areas, but we can see that happening in the South China Sea with Philippines, with Taiwan and with Japan also. So that is a part of the state policy of China to coerce, to intimidate, or to make certain aggressive overtures which doesn't look like an aggression, but they are clearly a claim on a territory which does not belong to China. This is what Chinese side has tried to do with the bordering areas. That is one of the reasons why we did have that Galwan clash, and the repercussions of that are still being felt in the bilateral ties with India and China. With now Chinese ambassador very much placed in Delhi, we can expect some forward movement. To give you some context, it has been almost 5 days since Prime Minister Modi has been elected, but there has not been any official greetings exchange from the political leadership of China. So they are also in a very calibrated manner moving towards bilateral ties. They are not up for all bonhomies and all goodwill. They have also their own interests, and they are going to stand by that. And India is also going to firmly stand by its own interests, its own boundaries issues, and all that Chinese side has been doing by renaming geographical location or posturing in an aggressive manner. They are going to be retaliated in the same way, and we'll have to see now how the Chinese Foreign Ministry is going to react on that.
It's very interesting that you talk about reactions coming in, but if this report is anything to go by, considering Modi 3.0 has just shaped up right now, what is the kind of messaging being sent out for our neighbour China?
Well, Akasha, to a great extent, we saw what External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar clearly laid out today morning when we asked him about the policies regarding China and Pakistan. While talking about Pakistan, he was very much clear that unless and until those safety and security concerns of India is ensured, that means that cross-border terrorism is stopped from the Pakistan. He said there cannot be a bilateral and mutual respect for each other. The same thing is with the Chinese side, and unless and until the Chinese side has those points, those sore points that is ailing the issue of bilateral ties between India and China along the border in eastern Ladakh, unless and until those issues are resolved, there is not
True.
a possibility of normal
True.
India-China bilateral ties.
Abhishek, I'm going to request you to continue staying with us. In fact, I'm also joined in by Sushant Sareen of ORF. Mr. Sareen, how do you view India's decision? Many would in fact opine that this should have been decided a long time ago.
Well, I suppose this is a classic case of, a tit-for-tat exchange that, this is a game two can play, what the Chinese have been up to. And the Chinese have been doing this for many, many years, decades, in fact. They make a fictitious claim, then they double down on it, then they convert that fictitious claim into an actual claim, then they start moving into that area and try and annex it or arrogate it to themselves. And I think this is something which needs to be called out. If now the Indian side is pushing back at China, this will clearly be seen by the Chinese as a very provocative move, just like the exchange of greetings with the Taiwanese president was. This will be similarly seen by the Chinese as a provocative move, but then this is a provocation that they have started by renaming places in Arunachal, constantly issuing missives to India that no Indian minister or leader can go and visit it, or they will protest about it, which is utter nonsense. And they are trying to manufacture their claim over Arunachal, and clearly that's not acceptable to India. The same thing they've been doing in eastern Ladakh and some other parts of India. And clearly, if the Chinese want to have good relations with India, then this kind of policy needs to be forsaken by them.
So, Shant, do you also see
both
this as
countries
a
can
step
move
forward in India's already existing muscular foreign policy? Because many are wondering, what will India's foreign policy under Modi 3.0 look like? Is if this is just the beginning to it, what is your view of how this is going to shape up as far as our national security at the LAC is concerned?
No, I think it's a no-brainer that the government is going to follow a much more assertive foreign policy, and I think that became very clear in Modi 2.0. So Modi 3.0 is going to be a kind of a continuity of the whole thing, and we are seeing that not just in terms of the neighborhood first policy, not just in terms of wanting to have better relations with the West, but also pushing back against adversaries which are challenging Indian sovereignty, India's territorial integrity, pushing back against them. The kind of deployments that we've seen in eastern Ladakh, that's something without parallel. Probably the last
time I asked you that is also because we've seen the opposition really galvanize how, in fact, China was only, coming into Indian territory, and that was a constant and consistent attack being launched by Rahul Gandhi.
Look, there will be the rough and tumble of Indian politics, right? The politicians in India will continue to play around on the issue of national security for political benefit, whether it's out of some fake news, whether it is, out of some tilted kind of news. That will happen. I think we need to learn to start taking that in our stride. The old culture where, the opposition always stuck by the government on issues of national security, I think that culture has gone out of the window, especially if you have a principal opposition party which goes abroad and then seeks interference in India so that, they can get rid of the incumbent government in India. When you have something like that starting to happen, then, carping sounds over policies on Kashmir or policies on, vis-a-vis China, policies vis-a-vis Pakistan. I think that is to be expected.
Many thanks to you, Sushant, for sharing in your precious insights with us. I'm also joined in by Major General K.K. Sinha, who's a defense expert as well. Major General, how do you assess India's viewpoint at the moment? Do you think it should just be reduced to a countering of narratives, and through this kind of nomenclature offensive that we've seen China, in fact, initiate first? But how should this just now be limited to renaming places? Where's the end?
Good evening and Jai Hind. Absolutely. It is a retribution and the same way, in the same tactics what the China has tried to do it. First, they claimed the Arunachal Pradesh, calling it to the South Tibet, 90,000 square kilometer. Thereafter, they started off after Doklam. If you see the Doklam, that is 2017, 2021, when the India was very aggressive, especially in the Yangtze area, in these areas of Tawang. That is the time they issued the cartographic, we call it cartographic
True.
warfare. And this is the warfare, the China plays well. They have